All right, the one and only Brian Rauf is here. He's from Heat Check CBB. He's been a friend of the Sleepers podcast show for years and came on during the summer, one episode with us. So he's going to be helping us out with some of these previews and recaps. Today, we are talking Arkansas against Duke in the ACC-SEC Challenge. Critical game, I think, for both sides. Arkansas a little bit in free fall right now. Tremont Mark's status is up in the air for this game. That would obviously be a huge loss if he doesn't play. But at the end of the day, this is a home game for Eric Musselman at Bud Walton Arena against a top 10 opponent in the country in the Duke Blue Devils. Who is this game more important for, Brian?
I think it's more important for Duke. And I know the main line of thinking may be Arkansas simply because it's a home game. You've been sliding. This is a great opportunity to right the ship with an emphatic statement win, which is true and is certainly the case. But I think we're at the point with Arkansas and Eric Musselman teams in general where we know they'll be fine in February and March, no matter how they look in November, right? So even if Arkansas looks bad and loses this game by like 20, right, it's not going to change my long-term outlook for them. I'll be concerned if it looks that way in February when things start kind of turning around traditionally for Arkansas teams. But we have seen Eric Musselman teams get blown out in these kind of games in November, come back and be unstoppable and reach your second weekend in the NCAA tournament, right? We haven't seen that as much from Duke, and Duke's been a little bit shakier. I had them as my preseason number one team. Others didn't, but they were consensus really preseason top three. They haven't looked bad, haven't suffered that terrible loss, but they also haven't looked that good to be able to play at that kind of real elite level. This is a chance to go on the road, beat a good team, and show that and play that way. They're not as proven, and Shire is not as proven as Eric Musselman is, just from a tenured coaching standpoint. So it matters for both sides, but I have more track record of believing in Arkansas than I do in this Duke team. And if Duke wants to be that national title contender, this is the chance where you really put your stamp on it.
Yeah, definitely a resume opportunity for both sides. But if Duke wants to potentially enter the NCAA tournament as a one seed, I think this is a game you would love to win and have under your belt, no matter how good Arkansas looks right now. And then for Arkansas, obviously, anytime you can have a W next to Duke on your resume, that's a massive swing. Right. I don't expect that Arkansas is going to end up on the bubble. Like, I think they're going to get healthy and everything will work its way out. But certainly if you got the win here, you feel much better than if you're 4-4 on a 3-game losing streak, losing 4 of your last 5 with just the Stanford double overtime miracle win is the only game. Like, things are starting to look a little more dire for Arkansas than I think anyone wants to admit about a must team, right? Like, what do you make of the free fall right now?
I don't mean to dismiss it. And I particularly the context of this was the game everybody had circled when the ACC-SEC Challenge stuff came out, was that Duke's going to Bud Walton, like pretty good Arkansas team. Like this is the one that people are watching and paying attention to. But they've done this before, right? And you can go back to the team last year, 2 years ago. There are questions about spacing. There are questions about shooting, questions about rotation. L. Ellis, I know, has been at the focal point of that this year, where he played a lot of minutes. Now he's not playing a lot, and Arkansas is not finding their way as he's not playing a lot. This is, I think, typical of what we see from Arkansas under Musselman, where they have this stretch where they got to figure out what works, figure out who they are, figure out rotations. Because when you're bringing in so many new guys really every season from the transfer portal, you're going to have some time to figure things out. And you can argue that they don't look as well as they should when you're trying to figure things out. But I trust Musselman to get it figured out by the end of this season. If they want to contend for top 4 seed, top 3 seed of the NCAA tournament, you need this win. But we've seen Arkansas go to second weekends less than that, right? As a 5 seed, even a 6 seed, I think at one time. They don't need to be that elite team to be playing at an elite level in February and March. That said, you want to keep the alarm bells from going up. You beat Duke and kind of stop that. If you look bad, then it becomes to your point, okay, we don't have many more games left for SEC play. We need to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, and it would be a first under Musselman too, right? I was looking back through it. This is year 5 of the Eric Musselman era. He has 1 loss in his tenure in the month of November coming into this season. He has 3 losses in November this season. So this feels a little unprecedented. Look, when you just step back and look at what has happened with some of these players, it's not as crazy as it sounds on paper to say an Eric Musselman team is like 1 Duke loss away from being a 500 basketball team. They got to get Tremont Mark healthy. He's so good. Yes. He's such just a 3-level guy. You saw it in the North Carolina game. He was trying to single-handedly will them to a victory, and he almost did before he went down. Obviously, a scary injury situation. He did not practice with the team as of today, which is when we're recording. This will be the last time we have a chance to talk about this before the game. So who knows if he plays? Great. I still wouldn't expect him to be 100%, but obviously critical to them playing their best ball that he gets back involved. But even like the other guys on this roster outside of the injury are just not where I think Muss would have hoped they would be to start the season. Like on paper, I thought L. Ellis was going to be a really big part of this team. And maybe that's on me for totally misevaluating that. But if you had told me how many minutes he was going to play in the battle for Atlantis, I would have been like, oh, this isn't going to go well. So I think by the end of the year, they could look a lot different than they do right now, I think is the point.
Right. And you mentioned Musselman has had 1 November loss in his tenure. Their schedule, like their more difficult games throughout his tenure have happened in December. So it's almost like they're going through these steps a little bit earlier than normal. But yeah, like L. Ellis played a good amount. First sign of trouble. Now he's not really playing as much. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play a little bit more, particularly with some of his background at Louisville, having gone against Duke before. You need Brazil to have a big game in this. And he, I think, is the key to me, because the guards will work themselves out, but having a big like that, who is so versatile and can play on both ends, is huge, particularly in this game where you're going up against Kyle Filipowski, who Duke doesn't run everything through him, but he is key to everything Duke does and has been Duke's most consistent player this season. If he's able to win that battle, Arkansas has a chance, and you're feeling a little bit better about Arkansas. But if he's not, and not providing that outlet for the perimeter struggles that Arkansas has had, then I think some of those questions have a little bit more legitimacy to them.
I like the Brazil call out. Obviously, he's a swing piece. When he plays well, I feel like it's just like an evolution of this Arkansas team that is always there. I would go so far as to say this, though, and I'm sorry to any Arkansas fans listening to this. I don't think Brazil will matter much in this game, because I don't think there's an outcome where he outplays Duke's front court. Like, yes, he needs to hang. He needs to hold his own. We could simulate this 100 times. I don't think we're ever coming away being like Brazil got the best of Filipowski tonight. Where I do think Arkansas could win this game is in the backcourt, which I know sounds crazy because everybody loves Duke's guards. And if Tremont Mark's not playing, this becomes infinitely harder. But we have seen Devo Davis be a big game guy. We've seen him take over against some of the best guards in the country. He needs to do that tonight on November 29th instead of in the 3rd week of March. But like, it could happen. Khalif Battle is certainly capable of getting 20 to 30 points tonight. And to narrow in on a Duke side of things, they've got dudes, right? There's McDonald's All-Americans all over the floor. I still don't feel like this is the fully realized version of what John Shire needs in the backcourt. I don't see the Tyrese Proctor 100 out of 100, what everybody expected from the offseason.
That's been the biggest surprise to me, because what Proctor showed at the end of last season was incredible. And the growth he showed throughout the course of last season was incredible. But it's like he's regressed to the way he was playing at the start of last season, when he was a freshman who still should have been a senior in high school. Like, you don't regress back to that. It was understandable then. It's not as understandable now. I think it's totally realistic to think Devo Davis gets the best of him, and it kind of gets under him and frustrates him. We saw at Duke, Arizona, Caleb Love and Proctor kind of chirping back and forth at each other. That strikes me as something that's going to happen here. Duke needs one of their freshmen to step up. And the big games they've had, Caleb Foster did it against Michigan State. They've had McCain step up a few times and produce. Those guys have been inconsistent, but if they get something out of Roach and one of those two guys to have a big game, then I think it lessens Proctor's impact. But kind of to your larger, bigger picture point, if Duke is going to be the team we thought Duke is going to be, Proctor has to be the guy that we thought Proctor was going to be, a National Player of the Year candidate, an All-American candidate, first team All-ACC kind of guy. Arkansas is going to test him. He has a chance to prove that. But I am also confident in Arkansas's ability to rattle Proctor a little bit.
Yeah, I am too. And I'm gonna use some feisty words here, but here's my read on Duke. And caveat being, I have only watched Duke in the 3 games I think we could pick out and say we didn't see the best version of Duke. I don't know if I'm the curse. I don't know what it is. I watched them against Arizona. I thought they got punked. I watched them against Michigan State at the Champions Classic. Honestly, I thought they should have beaten Michigan State by 30 with the way Michigan State was playing that game. They didn't, and I don't know what to take of that. And then I watched them against Southern Indiana because Riley Davis texted me and said Duke's really about to lose to Southern Indiana, and it was almost halftime. So I don't know what's up with this team, but I would summarize it by saying this. I think Duke's a little bit soft. And I don't know if that's changing. They're skilled as hell. They're deep as hell. But I don't know that Kyle Filipowski and Tyrese Proctor are going to start or stop flopping around the court. Like they play for calls. They don't play for contact. And that is the one thing that makes me optimistic that Arkansas could win this game, even without Tremont Mark, because these dudes are tough as hell. It's going to be a raucous environment. And if they just come into this game saying, we are not going to get punked by some soft dudes, I think they got a shot.
That's kind of part of the reason, too, why I think this matters for Duke is because everything you just said is accurate. That Arizona game, they absolutely got punked by Arizona. The Southern Indiana game, they weren't ready. Like they were slow defensively. They left shooters open. They weren't ready. They didn't care. Michigan State game looked like they were a little lost, which was really confusing. There were some locker room rumblings after the Arizona game with Filipowski saying he was calling out people without calling out people post game. People thought it was kind of directed at Proctor, but things have kind of died down since then. But your point is not totally off. Like I think there is something with this team where we'll find out a lot with their response to the atmosphere and the way Arkansas is going to play you moving forward. If we need to recalibrate our expectations for Duke or not.
I think preseason, my colleague Carter Elliott placed a plus 500 odds bet that Duke would be the first team meeting team. So it's good to know that he may have a winning ticket without even knowing it based on what you've heard. All right, call your shot here. Who wins this game? I believe Ken Pom has Duke as a road favorite by 3 points. Pending the Mark injury here, I think we're going to see Duke open closer to 5 or 6 point favorites on the road. Who wins the game, and who would you bet if you had to bet at like a 6 point line?
Duke wins, Duke covers, but it's not comfortable. It's not the type of performance where after the game we're talking about Duke really establishing itself. It's kind of one of those things where I don't know, particularly with Mark at least being limited. I'll assume limited. Where Arkansas just doesn't have the horses. Doesn't have the shooting. Yeah. Duke covers, but it's an ugly win where you kind of like Michigan State win, where you don't feel great about Duke after.
I love that answer. That's my answer too, with the caveat being, if Tremont Mark plays in this game, give me Arkansas money line. If he does not,
okay,
I'm riding Duke, and I think it could honestly get a little ugly. I just don't think they have the horses without Duke, and I'm with you. It's not gonna. There is no outcome, I don't think, where we come away being like, love Duke here, because I think even if they look great, you can explain it away with how shot down Arkansas is right now.
Exactly.
But either way, I hope this is a highly entertaining game. Good luck, Duke fans. Good luck, Arkansas fans. That was Brian Rauf from Heat Check CBB. I'm GregWaddell from Sleepers Media. You can follow the Sleepers Media YouTube channel all season long for recaps and previews of every single major game in college basketball.